This is part 2 of the previous video, where we covered the basics of Blender in 7 minutes, so be sure to check the first part if you haven't already. In this video we will cover advanced tools and get good at Blender in 7 minutes. After watching this along with the previous part, I can assure you that you will get a good grasp and understanding of the program. The snapping tool allows you to snap to the vertex, edges, and faces of an object. For example, if you have multiple objects in the scene that you want to snap together, you can enable the snapping tool above and select vertex, edges, or faces from above, then press G to grab. And when you hover over another object here, you can snap to its edges or faces. Press 1 on the number pad to enable the left view, press 3 on the keyboard to enable the right view, and press 7 on the keyboard to enable the top view. These modes allow you to see your objects on different axes. To help you deform it correctly, let's create a few multiple objects. As you can see, each object has a dot in the middle. This is called the origin point of that object. This origin point allows your object to rotate scale in the center. Let's say if your origin is something like over here, you can right-click on that object and go to Set Origin. Select the origin to geometry. To understand it a bit better, let's select all of our objects. By dragging over them and rotating them, notice they are rotating in the same direction, but we want them to rotate in their axis. We can do that by going to the top and select local, so we can rotate them individually and select the individual origins to rotate them to their origins. Now when I rotate them, they rotate them in their origins. It's okay if you don't get it in the first go. You will understand it more once you practice. You can quickly add more geometry to an object with subdividing. First, you select the object in the object mode, then you have to go to edit mode or press the tab on the keyboard to quickly go to the edit mode. After this, right-click on the keyboard and select subdivide. You can repeat subdivide to add more geometry to work with. Now imagine editing each vertex in this mesh. It will be a nightmare. Good thing Blender developers added a feature, something called proportional editing. Proportional editing allows you to quickly deform an object by manipulating multiple vertexes at the same time. Just enable the proportional editing from the top and select connected only from the drop-down. Now when you select a vertex and press G on the keyboard, nothing happens, but when you roll the mouse wheel you can see a circle will appear. Adjust the circle radius accordingly and press G and pull it out in the Z-axis. See, we successfully added a bump in the object. Yay for us. Speaking of deforming an object, we have something called modifiers. Now what are modifiers? Well, as the name suggests, they allow you to modify an object. You can access modifiers by pressing this spanner icon, and you dive into the ocean of modifiers, and eventually, you will quit Blender. But wait, in this ocean of modifiers, you'll be working 80% in this section, and in this section, you'll be working 80% with these modifiers only. So let's cover these modifiers quickly. Array modifier allows you to extend the object. Bevel, quickly add a bevel to the all edges of the object. Mirror modifier allows you to create a mirror copy of the object. Just select the main object in this section and select the details above. Solidify adds thickness to the object. Subdivision modifier allows you to add more geometry to the object by dividing its edges and faces. It also helps you object to making it more smooth. Remember to keep the layout of the modifiers in mind as they work from top to bottom. If a modifier is not working properly, maybe adjust its order in the stack. Speaking of smoothness, there's an option in a Blender to make your geometry smooth. In object mode, right-click on the object to make it smooth, or you can revert to flat by selecting Shade Flat. I have the shortcut cheat sheet available for you to download in the description for the video. It has all the basic shortcuts for you to work in Blender. Trust me, Blender is much easier and quicker to work with using shortcuts, so make sure to download the shortcuts cheat sheet and start practicing. For example, to repeat an action, you just press Shift+R on the keyboard to repeat the last action. Now imagine doing it manually. Hope you got my point. You can split your workspace into multiple workspaces by hovering over the corner, and once you see the plus icon, drag to split the workspace. To join, you just right-click on the edge and select Join Areas and drag arrows in the direction you want to join the area. First, understands what UV mapping is. UV mapping is the process of allying a 2D texture on the 3D surface. For example, Blender doesn't know how to wrap this candy. Where should he put the cuts? And what should be the right angle? So to do that, we go to UV mapping tab, make cuts and seams on our 3D model so the Blender can understand, and this is cut and this is the texture. Let's go to the UV mapping tab and clear the already applied UV. Select the edges. And you can press the U key and select Mark Seam. If you create the wrong seam, you can clear out the seam as well. Let's unwrap cube texture. As you can see on right, press U and select Unwrap. Enable the sync. Each object is different, and you have to think carefully where you put the seam and how to properly unwrap it. You will get used to it by practicing it. Remember to avoid stretching the texture. Let's add a default checker texture to the object to test things out. If this checker is not looking stretched, then any texture you apply will also look okay and not stretched. Don't get intimidating by this node system, we'll see it in detail in a second. We'll look at textures and this node system in a bit. After you rotate, scale or move an object, it's essential to apply your transformation. Press Ctrl+A and apply location, rotation, or scale, so the Blender knows that this object is no longer in its original form now. Let's understand shading. You can switch to the shading tab, and it will give you all the shading related properties. Notice it also changed our viewport to material preview, but what I am gonna do is just split out the view in the default workspace and change the bottom one to shader editor, and from the top, I will select material preview. It's just a personal preference style. Notice our object doesn't have any materials yet. I am gonna press the new button to add new material. Options we get here are same as these in material preview, but instead of tweaking properties over here, we can work with something called nodes. Nodes are like wires, we plug something accurate to them, and we get a result. To add a texture we can add a new texture. To add a texture we go to the add menu or press Shift+. The most popular node is image texture. You can download textures for free from Google. I also added a texture in the description to show you as an example. After selecting image texture we have this panel. Press open and locate the base color image and drag the node to base color. Notice it is also affecting our object over here. Then add a roughness texture and plug it into the roughness. Notice now our object have a roughness controlled by this image instead of image texture. You can use several textures accordingly. Most of them are self-explanatory, and you can find out more in the official Blender documentation. Now let's quickly understand how we animate in the Blender. Let's add a plane and move our cube right above the plane. Let's switch to the animation tab over here. On the left side you see the output, on the bottom you see the doke sheet. The doke sheet is where you add keyframes. Keyframes are basically just position, rotation, or scale of an object from one place to another. So let's just place our playhead at one frame and press I on the keyboard. It allows you to insert a keyframe. So let's insert a keyframe. And press I on the keyboard on the frame 25 and press spacebar to play. We don't need this much length, so let's drop it to frame 50, or can press this record button over here to record every channel, move, scale, and rotate. Notice while record button is pressed necessary keyframes are automatically been added in the doke sheet. You can also duplicate by Shift+D or delete keyframes. Or move them by pressing G key. To render your animations you go to the render tab and adjust the percentage and set location. It's a good practice to export them as a PNG sequence. Once you're happy go to render and render animation. And it will render the animation in a while. If you make it this far, congratulations, you've learned a lot today. Share your thoughts in the comments section and make sure to check the first. Also follow me on Instagram at cg.runner. I would love to see what you came up with. I have a lot of Blender content planned for this channel, to make sure to subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss anything. See you next time.